Good morning and welcome to One-on-One with the Chief. I'm Tony Farrar. I'm the police chief for the City of Rialto Police Department. And with me today are Brenda Parker and Lino Martinez. Good morning to both of you, and thank you for being here.
Good morning, Chief.
Thank you.
And I guess probably the easiest way to get started is to go ahead and we'll interact with some questions that you have for me. And we'll start with ladies first. So Brenda, if you'd like to go ahead with your first question, and I'll answer it the best I can.
Yes, my first question is, because I'm a citizen here in Rialto, I'm more concerned about the new road that's going through Pepper. We have a middle school that's over there, and I'm quite concerned about our children. So my question to you is, what will you and your law enforcement do to help enforce the law of no trucks on that road?
Well, the city does have an ordinance for the trucking industry, and we do have designated truck routes. So our traffic unit is trained to handle the truck routes and enforce the trucks to make sure that they're on the right roads during the right times of the day or the evening. On top of that, we have recently implemented a commercial enforcement program. We have a brand new commercial enforcement truck that you'll see driving around, and that person's job is specifically to enforce the truck laws. On top of that, we submitted last month for a grant to enhance our current program that we have right now, a grant for about $95,000 to add an additional officer and additional equipment and additional signage and some educational components to try to combat the problem that you're talking about. So we think we're well on our way to deal with that, and of course if you have any concerns, if you happen to live in that particular area and you do see things that need to be taken care of, you can always call our traffic unit and we'll address the issues for you.
Awesome.
Okay. Okay, so I think maybe we could just kind of, maybe we'll rotate back and forth.
Sure,
So,
that sounds like a plan.
Okay, Lino?
Okay, in the Kelly Thomas incident, which happened out in Fullerton, how are the police officers trained to handle any similar situations like that?
Okay, that was that's actually a very good question, and it was a very unfortunate incident. Just to kind of start with, police officers in the state of California have a governing body. It's called POST for short. It's Peace Officer Standards and Training, and it's based out of Sacramento. And that governing body basically sets the rules for California law enforcement. Part of those rules include like going to the police academy, which is a 5-month program. So when a new officer goes to the academy, they spend 5 months in the police academy, they come out, they go into a secondary training phase, which is the department's training program. Now, built into our training program, which is pretty much consistent throughout the state, we have components in there that deal with things like tactical communication, verbal judo, use of force, firearms, pursuit driving, all of those concepts that kind of lent itself to some of the issues that happened in the Fullerton incident. On top of that, for our department, we have in-house use of force trainers, so we don't have to go outside for that. We have in-house certified trainers that periodically update us, test us, whether it's briefing training or live simulated training on use of force concepts and how to talk to people. Because that's really the bottom line is, you know, the way our job is, we're taught to use our mouth first, use our head first, our mouth second, basically, and every incident that we have, you definitely want to resolve at the lowest level. To add to that, though, is we have a couple of extra components. We have the Behavioral Health Center down on Foothill Boulevard that has been at our department several times and provided us with training on how to deal with not only the homeless, but those that might have some type of disability or mental deficiency or something to that nature. So we've had some good one-on-one training. And then the last thing is we have actually the ability to have a mobile response team, and I have a flyer for it here. It's the Community Crisis Service, and it's on Foothill. And these folks will come out with us and help us evaluate individuals to make sure that we're providing them with the best service that we can, because this is a service-oriented industry, and they are, you know, whether they're homeless or residents and they have an issue, it's our job to take care of that and to help them out. So all in all, it really starts with the department's policies, the level of accountability that the supervisors and me being the chief set for the officers, and how we follow through with that. But I'll add one last thing. Right now, we're in the middle of an experiment, an actual experiment being run through Cambridge University in England. And the experiment is body-worn cameras. So what you'll see right now, every once in a while, is you'll see a police officer wearing a video camera. It's very small. You can't really tell too much, but depending upon what day of the week it is or whether they're an experiment or a control piece, they'll be wearing those cameras. And the hope is that if we have a positive outcome, which the data shows that we're having a very good outcome right now, after the first of the year, we will wear those cameras all the time. And what that does is it heightens the level of accountability for the officers. It increases their professionalism. It reduces citizens that may want to, that have an issue. It tends to slow the citizen down that might become violent or want to attack an officer. And I'll give you a couple of really quick preliminary stats and we'll move on. So far, over the last 10 months that we've been running the experiment, complaints are down 70% and use of force is down. The need to use force is down 50%. So you can see the impact that this experiment is having on our department right now.
Oh, very
Excellent.
good.
Excellent. Well, my next question is, I've been here in the city for quite a while, and I was here during the time that our police department was going through some peculiar times. And at that time, though, the community had a very good relationship with the police department. Since our reconstruction, if you will, or our what do we want to call it? The new hierarchy in the police department, the relationship with the community has diminished. I would like to know what are your plans to reestablish your relationship with the community?
No. A lot of things have already been done over the past. When you go back to the previous police chief, he really did, and I think rebuilding is the word that we're probably looking for.
Yes.
We had a few difficult moments in our lives, and we've basically kind of rebuilt the organization and put it on a very good path. I think that we've done a fabulous job of reconnecting with the community, but we always have work to do.
Yes.
So over the last year, what we've done is we've implemented a lot of different programs, and the first step of that is, I call it the information piece or component. We have a lot of things on our website. If you happen to browse our website, to where we can keep the community connected with us. We have things like Nixle, which is you can sign up for it and we can send you messages on what's happening in the department. We have a department Facebook that you can log on to if you're computer savvy and that's your thing, where you can kind of stay connected with what we're doing at a more casual level. We have a computer program called Code Red, which is an emergency response component where you can sign up for that as well, and if there's an emergency in town, we'll notify you on your cell phone, by email, or on your home phone. We have area command meetings that we've implemented that we do 3 or 4 times a year in the 4 different areas of the cities to try to draw the community out to really talk about things that are happening in their neighborhood. We have recently implemented what I think is going to be a great program, the Community Liaison Officer, which is Corporal Cameron Nelson, and his job is to help build on some of the relationships that we've established over the years by keeping the community informed on what's happening and showing up at different events and making sure that we have a presence around the community at whatever's going on. We have a couple other really cool components. We have the Citizen Police Academy, which we run a couple of times a year. As a matter of fact, there's one coming up in January where it's a 14-week class where if people really want to know why we do what we do, they can come out and they can attend the class. It's 1 night a week, and they'll be taught why we do what we do by detectives, by traffic officers, by the animal control officers, by dispatchers. So it really kind of pushes us together a little bit more. Most of all, what I can really say is that we've done a great job of getting the face of the department out there at a lot of community events. You talk about National Night Out, probably one of the biggest things that we do every year, where there's a couple thousand people downtown, and we bring everybody out, and we just have a good time and kind of get to know one another. So I believe we're well on our way to getting that established. One thing I forgot, and I want to make sure I plug it, is we do the Coffee with the Chief,
Yes.
Which is a monthly event, the second Tuesday of every month. Location kind of varies, but that's another casual setting where we can just kind of talk about things. Because in my opinion, a lot of things we make them too difficult. And I think if we can exchange information more and we can share more things together, we'll build on that foundation that we already have. So, but we've been doing all that for about the past year. But again, as more things come up and we find the need to do different things, we're going to do those things. So, our motto for the department is committed to to our community, and we really mean that. And that's my job to make sure we do that.
Okay.
Okay, this second question is kind of attached to the first one. How often are police officers trained to handle hostile situations? I mean, is it a yearly thing or a monthly thing or a weekly thing?
The governing unit that I spoke of before, post, the criteria for law enforcement officers is they have to do 24 hours of what they call perishable skills training every 2 years. So that skill set involves those things that they believe are important to law enforcement officers that you kind of tend to lose if you don't use them a lot. Right. And that it's comprised of pursuit driving, firearms, use of force, and tactical communications. So that 24 hours is built around that component. On top of that, we do have training that we do in-house throughout the entire year. We have less than lethal training, which are those devices, if you've ever seen a taser
right.
or things like that. We have in-house tactical communication courses that we send both the dispatchers to and the officers to, that we put on here in-house to make sure that we're talking to people the way they need to be spoken to. Mm-hmm. The main thing that we teach our folks is, again, to use your head first, and then take control of whatever situation by using your mouth first. And usually, that is successful when they explain to people what they're doing. And we found that to be very successful so far. So it's similar to the first question that we talked about. We do train all year long on these things. And then the last thing to probably add to that is we debrief things. And what that means is if we have an incident take place, or even if we don't and we have we heard of another department that had something happen to them, whether it's a use of force issue like the Fullerton thing you're speaking of, we sit down in briefings with our supervisors and we talk about it. And we talk about what they could have done better. And then we critique ourselves if we have an incident happen. We'll sit down and we'll discuss what could we have done better, what would have been more efficient, what would have been more proper, whatever it is, to try to come up with a better way of handling things. And we do that every night in briefing. And it's typically called briefing training. Mm-hmm. But what that is, it's all scenario based, and we talk about things to make sure that if something similar happens, we're kind of all on the same page and we know what to do.
Okay.
Well, since we're on the subject of excessive force use and accountability for that, let me just move on to this question I have. And it says, for the officers that have 3 or more consecutive or excessive force complaints, what is your accountability for this process?
Another great question. We've come a long way with that type of a system. It used to be things were tracked, in a book, in a notebook, on paper. Now with technology, we have a system in place, a computer-based internal affairs system, or professional standard software system, if you will, that tracks several components. It tracks use of force and the outcome of the use of force, whether whatever the officer did it worked or it didn't work. It tracks pursuits. It tracks officer complaints. And it tracks collisions. And what that enables us to do is every time we have a complaint, whether it's just telephoned in or what have you, it's put into the computer base, and there are levels set within that computer base to where I know what's going on. So there can be thresholds on certain things in there. So an example would be you could set a threshold for officer use of force at 3. And when somebody hits the level of 3, it would alert me Officer X has reached 3 uses of force, and I go in there and I look at those to make sure that they're acceptable uses of force. Is there a training thing that we're seeing that we need to do? Do we need to brief on it? Do they need additional, coaching, teaching, mentoring, or training in a particular area? Or is it a disciplinary issue that has to be addressed in a different component? So that system has been very efficient in dealing with officer complaints and use of force. You add to that the cameras that we're talking about right now and the 70% reduction in complaints and the 50% reduction in use of force, and you can see that we have a very good handle on dealing with that. And that computer system is available to the sergeants, the frontline supervisors as well, not just my office, because they're the ones that supervise the officers on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely.
So they can log in at any time and they can check and see what the activity level is on complaints, use of force, crashing cars, for every officer. And if we start to see a trend, we can deal with that trend appropriately.
May I, real quick, Lino, I would just like to elaborate a little bit on this question and your answer. Now, you told me about all the great things that you have in place for handling it, but you never gave me the accountability process. I understand about the cameras, but I guess I'm looking more for where are our citizens going to be involved? Are our citizens going to be, are you going to go to the citizens and ask them, get their side of the story?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Or, I want to know, where do they have a say, and where's their ear? Where's your ear for them?
Okay, that's probably more the process. So quickly to kind of cover the processes, if there is a use of force complaint or an officer complaint in general,
Yes.
Those come into the police department. They are routed to my office initially. I take a look at whatever the complaint is. If it's something that I feel can be dealt with by just talking to someone, and it can be resolved, because a lot of times it's a lack of information. It may come in as a complaint because they don't know why we did what we did, and once I explain to them why we did what we did, the individual may go, hey, I understand that. Thank you very much. And if it doesn't reach that level and it needs to go a little bit further, I send it over to our professional standards unit. There's a lieutenant and a corporal that work in that unit specifically full-time, and every complaint and every use of force is investigated fully, which means that they'll start at ground zero, like you said. They will read the complaint, they will contact the person making the complaint, they will interview witnesses that may have been there, they pull call histories, radio histories, they interview the officers involved, and then they come to a fact. They're basically fact finders. And once that whole thing is packaged up, it's given back to me, and then I am basically, probably the easiest way to put it, the trier of fact, to determine if there's discipline, to determine if it was within policy. If it's a policy violation, then I would handle it appropriately. If it's not, then the person would be recontacted regardless of whatever the outcome is. The individual will be recontacted and let them know that it's been handled. Now, there are some governing laws that won't let me expound too much on the disposition, because there are the Peace Officer Bill of Rights and people have certain rights to privacy, but they are fully involved in the process all the way through from beginning to the end.
Okay. Lino, if I may, is your questions on the excessive force here? Because I have another question.
No,
about
mine are a little different now.
Okay, so may I continue
Sure,
along this
sure.
line? Okay, so my next question is that when a citizen files a complaint, what is the process and how long is the response time from the time that the complaint is submitted? I'm listening to all these wonderful things that you're saying, and we're really grateful for the cameras. We're really grateful for the extra training. We're grateful for all of those things because, as you know, we've both been here in the city. There's been a disagreement in the way that you all handle things and the way we think they should be handled. So I'm very appreciative to the Police Academy that you offer us as citizens and all the great things that we have going in. But I still am a little concerned, and some of my neighbors are a little concerned about this complaint process because of the submission time, the lapse time between the submission time and the time is actually approached and is actually resolved. You made one mention about if there is an issue that you would go out and explain to the citizen why this was done, and normally they would say okay. But when you're talking about excessive force, I don't see it being okay. That's just one, and thank you so much for the Bill of Rights for the police officers. So that's going to cover that, but I just wanted to add that in. So once again, my main concern is the complaint process. Once it's submitted, what time should we be looking at for you to get back with us on a resolution?
Usually what happens, and I'll split it up so that way we're not going to confuse ourselves.
Okay.
Even if it is a use of force and somebody has an issue, it could be something as simple as I don't believe the officer should have handcuffed me.
Okay.
Well, a lot of times I can resolve that by, well, that's policy. They had to handcuff you. You were taken into custody, so you're going to get handcuffed, and I apologize for that, but that's the way that has to go. And they will say, okay, that's fine. We can have a difference of opinion on that, but if you're taken into custody for whatever it is, if that's the case, then you would have to get handcuffed. That's our policy.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I can clear things up like that. Now, if it's a use of force where it's a different situation, or even a complaint, again, there's two ways to do it. You can phone in a complaint, and we'll take it. You don't have to be here.
Right.
You can write a letter, or you can fill out a complaint form stating whatever the issue is, and then within usually 1 or 2 days, our Professional Standards Division, the lieutenant or the corporal, will contact whoever it is that has the issue or the complaint to find out what it is. To take the paperwork and say, I see this is what you're telling me. Is there something else you need to add? Is there any other information? Am I getting this exactly the way that you're telling me? A lot of times we may go meet with the individual because it's a little bit, it's nicer to meet in person sometimes.
Absolutely.
So you can sit down and have some dialogue with an individual to kind of get their feelings on what happened. And you may find out that you can clear it up. It may just be an informational thing, and it may not be. Okay, either way, that complainant, whatever it is usually contacted between 1 or 2 days. Because if it comes in on a Friday as a written complaint, they won't be back in until Monday. Mm-hmm. So Monday we'd pick it up, we'd make a phone call, and at least introduce ourselves. I'm Lieutenant so-and-so from Rialto PD. I'm going to be, I'm investigating the complaint that you had filed. Could you tell me more about it? Or would you like to meet and we can talk about it? That's where it starts. If it can't be resolved, then the process would start exactly as I explained before. We would do an investigation, and it would be deemed basically an internal investigation is what we call it, to deal with whatever the issue is, whether it's conduct, whether it's use of force, whatever it is. Depending upon how large the complaint is or what it involves and how many people we may have to talk to, it may take a little bit of time. Mm-hmm. But the person is contacted immediately within a day or two to let them know that we have we've received it, whether it's a letter, a phone call. I've had officer complaints that may come in to my secretary. And so I'll walk it over to the Internal Affairs Division. They will call the person up and they'll set up a meeting time for them to come in. So we like to handle them fast. Things don't need to sit because that just creates more issues, on the back end. So we're very timely in it. By law, we have to have them done within a year anyway, but that's by law. My rule of thumb is we get back to you within a day or two, so that way you know that what you have told us is important, whatever the outcome is. And that's basically how we handle the process.
Thank you. That was the answer I was looking for, is your time.
Sure.
So thank you very much. Thank you, Lena.
Oh, you bet. Okay. I think you may have already answered this in the citizens meetings you have at the coffee shops. What sort of results have you received as far as those meetings?
I think they've been great. We've probably had 5 or 6 maybe so far. Attendance probably start at 10 or 12, and now we're up to like 25 or 30.
Oh, good.
So I think it's a great forum for us to kind of sit down and have a cup of coffee, which is my favorite thing, and just to talk about things. And it can be anything from issues to what's happening in the police department to I have a problem in my neighborhood to anything. And it's a very informal setting where we can just talk about stuff, is kind of the way I like to term it, where it's not so stiff and, and it's a getting to know session. A lot of people, I've been in the city for 24 years now, and a lot of people, some people may not know me, and I may not know some of the people, so it's great to have them come out and just kind of sit down and just talk about things. The goal would be to have them probably, maybe at one point, maybe once a month. Actually we are doing it once a month. But in the form that we're talking about right now, I'd like to probably expand that to maybe have them quite a bit more often. Wow. Because this form allows us to get it out over the cable network for the city, for those that maybe can't, that may have the same questions that other people in the community might have. The one-on-one is a little bit, if they can't go to that, they could at least maybe watch us on the local TV channel and hear some of the things that are going on in the police department.
Oh, good, good. My next question is our police officers up to strength? I mean, do we have a full complement of police officers?
The answer would be no. If we're going to be, we really should be about 115 sworn, and at about 52, we would call them support personnel or non-sworn. Right now, we're at about 96 sworn officers, and we're at about 38 non-sworn. The reason for that gap is probably twofold. The first one is that knowing the economic times, things are a little bit tight right now. We've managed to keep up our level of enforcement and do the things we need to do with a larger gap in personnel, which in turn creates what we call salary savings, which is a savings to the city's general fund. Mm-hmm. So that's one reason that we've been kind of purposely running a little bit of a gap to help the city out and understandably to kind of keep costs down. Second of all is that with the rebuilding, and I'm so glad you brought that up, of the organization over the last few years, we don't settle for second best anymore. So when I look to hire someone for this department, maybe a while ago we would probably take the average person. We're not doing that anymore. I'm shopping for the best, I'm going to take the best, and I'm not going to settle for less. So with that bar being lifted a little bit higher than the norm, it may take me a little longer to hire somebody, but I'm looking for that somebody that's a better fit for the city, that'll serve the community well, and that have the high standards that I'm looking for, and I'm not going to settle. So that's another reason we might be down a few spots. But with that being said, let me tell you this. We've managed over the last year to become more efficient and more effective than we have over the last 4 or 5 years. Response times are still down, even with the absence of the full complement of officers. That would be emergency response times. Violent crime is down in the city once again, even down the complement of officers. So we're doing more with less. But we are working, we're working harder, but we are, to be honest, but we're also working smarter. We're using technology to help us out, and we're doing a lot of innovative things. And although we would like to have those officers and the support personnel up to the levels that they were at a previous time, we're still doing a very good job, and hats off to the men and women of the department for keeping us at the status quo where we're at.
I have one other question. Do we have a community affairs division?
Perfect question for perfect timing. We're right on the same page today. We talked earlier about the community liaison officer.
Yes.
A year or so, no, we didn't. Now we do. We've started that back up. We have Corporal Cameron Nelson, recently promoted young man who grew up in the city. So he's kind of a homegrown young man, very personable. He is our new community liaison officer. His job is to head up the community division. He has a complement of 40 to 45 volunteers, the police department volunteer program, headed by Judy Roberts. I'll give her a plug because she deserves one. A wonderful group of individuals that give of their time anytime we need them and really help us get out there and get some things done that we couldn't do without them. Along with that, we are rebuilding our reserve officer program. It was down to 0 positions. Now we're up to 5, and we're looking to fill up to 10, which puts some more boots on the ground and gets us out there doing some more proactive enforcement in addressing some of the issues of not only crime in the city but crime prevention. So we are bringing that component back. This was the first step in getting it back, and I can tell you, as long as I'm here, it won't go back the way it was, because this is a huge component. And even with staffing levels down, we felt the need to get this program back was imperative. It really is. You have to, and I'll say it again, in my opinion, we've had over the last 4 or 5 years some fantastic building blocks with the residents and businesses in the city. But with that being said, we have work to do. And there are a lot of things that we can build on. So I'm so happy you asked that question, because that component of this department is back, and as we get some more staffing levels up, we're going to add to that. we're going to add back in the crime-free multi-housing component and get that back going. So there are a lot of things on the horizon for us, but this is that was a great question, and I'm really happy that that component of this department is back in business.
I am too. I remember when that component was viable, and that really helped with our relationship with the police department. When we first got started, when we first started our neighborhood watch and all of our neighborhood watch meetings, that was a viable piece for us to build our relationship with the police department. With that being said, what exactly are their goals and objectives? And how do they plan to interact with the community?
Well, they're going to, Corporal Nelson's job is going to be, there's three kind of components to it.
Okay.
The first one is obviously the simplest of them all, in sense of his position, is to, just what you said, to build on the relationships that we've had already. And that's in the business district, that's in the apartment complexes, and that's with the residents of the community. The second component is to get out there and let people know what's happening in their local police department. So if they don't have access to a computer and they're not tech savvy and they don't want to look at the web page, or they can't, his job is to take that cadre of volunteers and reserve officers and get out in the community. For anything, if you have a homeowners association and you want to know what's happening in your police department, we'll be there. And we'll show up with a group of folks, we'll have handouts, we'll have question and answer time, we will have a presentation on here's what's happening in your police department, along with some safety tips, depending upon what time of the year. The holidays coming up right now, thefts tend to rise a little bit more than normal, so we'll be out there talking about crime prevention tips and things that we can do, how the community can be better eyes and ears for us, how I believe Cameron's tagline is going to be no call too small, which is something that's very important. Let's be honest, we don't have 115 police officers, but you know what we do have? We have 100,000 residents in this community. And what that means is we work off information from you. So what we want to get out there is be the eyes and ears for us. Don't worry, it's not too small. If something's in your neighborhood and you're just not sure what's going on, call us. And we want to know what's going on. So that's the second component. The last piece is to take some of the programs that we have, build on those, and I was talking about like Nixle, Code Red, some of those social networking devices and things that we do, and make them better. But get out there and make sure people know they're there. Because a lot of people don't know what we have to offer. And it's our job to tell them. Let's be honest. I mean, not everybody of the 100,000 people are going to walk in the door and go, what can I do to help you? So it's our job to get out there and say, here's what we as a police department can do to help you. Here's what you can do to help us. And let's work together and deal with neighborhoods and deal with problems and deal with blight and graffiti and traffic and all those things that we need to deal with. So that's the primary function that Corporal Nelson will be doing over the next year. Any other questions?
No, I think you've answered them all, and I'm very grateful that you asked us to come here today, and I think you've made a positive answer to what we need here. I know we've got a long way to go, but what we have here is exactly as far as I'm concerned. You've answered my questions very well, and I'm pleased with it.
And I would like to say you answered my questions very well. I would like to also thank you and your team, the whole staff here, for the time that they dedicated to our community and helping us rebuild our relationship with you all in our community, because for me that's important. And I felt the loss when we was going through the rebuilding of the police department and the community. So these liaisons, we most definitely will be looking forward to meeting with them and rebuilding our relationship with the police department, between the police department and our communities. So thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Well, I'm very happy that we've had a great discussion. There'll be feel free to come back anytime. But honestly, I'm very happy to see that there are folks in our community that will take the time to come down and talk about things very bluntly and out in the open, because really it means a lot to me. I can't, as the head of an organization, I can't run things if I don't know what's happening. And sometimes people just, for whatever reason, may not want to come get involved to the level that you're at today. So I'm very much appreciative that you've taken the time to come down and ask some questions. And I hope that you leave here with the answers that you were looking for. Yeah. Again, I would say that we've done a great job over the last few years, but we have a lot of work to do on both ends. And I think that if we keep going at the rate we're going, things are going to be even better as we go into 2013. So again, thank you very much for being here and taking the time to meet with me. And that's it for today. And until next time, have a great day. So thank you.